Welcome, everybody. I'm watching as our audience logs in today for Stefano Ionescu's talk. We're very excited. And as soon as I see the numbers that most of you have logged in, we will begin the webinar. Welcome, everybody. I can see people continuing to log in. As usual, the New England Rug Society has a large crowd for such a wonderful speaker. And we will get started as soon as it looks like most people have joined us. I did launch a little bit early today to give people plenty of time. So it will be a few minutes. It's 1 minute until start time, and we will be waiting a few more minutes after start time to let everyone log in. Again, welcome to everyone. Welcome, everyone. We have people continuing to log in. So as usual, I will be holding for just a few more moments to allow people to be in the webinar and not miss a minute of our speaker today. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the New England Rug Society, we are so pleased to host Stefano Ionescu in our latest webinar. Before my colleague Julia Bailey from the New England Rug Society Steering Committee introduces Stefano, a few administrative comments for everyone. Stefano's talk will last roughly 60 minutes. We like to make sure our speakers start and end on time. to leave time for our audience to ask questions. So Stefano will be answering questions after his talk. The way that questions are posed will be with the Q&A function in Zoom. We will not be taking questions from chat. We will not be using the raise hand feature. So any of you and all of you who have questions, as the questions occur to you while Stefano is speaking, please type them into Q&A, and I will be posing questions to Stefano at the end. You may type in those questions at any time. A couple of points about the internet and Zoom. The audio, sound, and volume are controlled by each of you on your PC, either with the keys at the top of your keyboard towards the left with the little microphones on them, or by exiting full screen and using the control in the lower right of your screen to increase the volume. Sometimes you may want to change the volume with the speaker compared to Julia and myself. This webinar is being hosted on very fast internet plugged into an Ethernet cable. Each of you may have slower internet, and that experience where the sound and the video get out of sync is usually due to an internet speed issue, and it will be in all likelihood on your individual computer. So please be patient if that happens. Shut down all other apps, and worst case scenario, go to audio only, but you'll miss Stefano's beautiful slides. Stefano is speaking to us from Rome today, and we are so pleased to have him. So please give a warm welcome to him. And first to my colleague, Julia Bailey, New England Rug Society Steering Committee, who will introduce Stefano. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you, Jean. It's again my honor to represent the New England Rug Society in introducing today's speaker, Stefano Ionescu. Stefano was born in Transylvania, but has lived in Rome, where, as Jean told you, he's speaking from since 1975. He's the leading authority on Anatolian rugs that found their way in great numbers to Transylvania, where hundreds are still preserved in Protestant churches. As an independent scholar, Stefano has published articles, exhibition catalogs, and his Handbook of Fakes by Tuduk, the Romanian Tuduk, of course, being the most famous rug forger of the 20th century. Stefano has led several rug study tours to Transylvania, but many more of us have learned about the rugs there from his most important publication, Antique Ottoman Rugs in Transylvania, of which he is currently preparing a new and much expanded edition. In 2011, he won the Joseph V. McMullen Award for Scholarship and Stewardship of Islamic Rugs and Textiles. Today, Stefano will tell us about the history of Transylvania and explain how and why so many Anatolian rugs got there. Catering to our frustrated longing for travel, he will show us some of the marvelous churches where the rugs reside. Then he'll discuss some still mysterious design elements on these rugs. Now, I invite you to join us from wherever you are in welcoming today's speaker, Stefano Ionescu. Stefano, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Julia. Thank you very much, Jean. I was impressed by the amount of work which this webinar involved. So I'm hopeful our audience will enjoy it. I would really like to greet everybody from Australia to Canada, from Sweden to Italy, passing through Berlin, and till far away to the West Coast and maybe in Arizona. I will show you about 60 slides, which are self-explanatory. So mine will be only easy comments which help you to enjoy the material, which is so abundant. Everybody is familiar with geography. Transylvania is bordered by the Carpathian Mountains and is one of the three main regions of present-day Romania, which is Moldavia, Wallachia, and subregions Bukovina and Oltenia. I will briefly trace three elements of the history which are fundamental just to have a time lapse. Of course, the conquest of Constantinople is a major event, and here I represented it with a fresco from Sucevica Monastery from the second half of the 16th century, which represents a battle between the Christians and the Muslims. And in that case, it was not exactly the Turkish army. So the second step, which is very important, is 1541 and the Battle of Mohacs. And we can see here Suleiman the Magnificent leading the Ottoman army towards one of the most important victories in the history. Many issues happened after, and one of these is the fact that Hungary became a pashalik, but Transylvania remained an autonomous principality under Ottoman suzerainty. It is important to remember that Turks did not live in Transylvania. Finally, 1683, the siege of Vienna, where the Turkish army was defeated, and this was only the start of a long period of Austro-Turkish wars, which ended with the Treaty of 1699. During this period, something which is important for our topic, carpet trade declined. Shortly after, Transylvania became part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and this was accompanied by a shift of fashion, which influenced again the trade with carpets, and this is something which contributed to the end of the production in Anatolia of certain patterns which were meant for export. Of course, this is a very, very schematic and simple explanation. So I will try to trace the reason of the presence of such an important amount of carpets in the churches in Transylvania, which is an absolutely unique cultural phenomenon. And I think that there are 4 steps which we must consider. Of course, the arrival of the carpets is in most cases due to the trade, but not only. So it is well known, because it was often quoted, the custom registers of Brasov of 1503, which mentions 500 Turkish rugs which entered the town in 11 months. This is indeed an extraordinary amount for that time, and we must consider that unfortunately we don't have the records for all the years, so it is difficult to build a precise figure for the carpets which were imported in Transylvania. For sure, the reason of such a large population of carpets is due to the role of rugs in Transylvania. And here I detailed some of the most significant reasons, related to the presence of the rugs. So this generated the accumulation of such a considerable number of rugs. We will mention briefly the social status, the gift of prestige, and they were accompanying important events in the life of prominent citizens. They were also used to adorn the homes, on the walls, on the tables, on the sofas, rarely on the floor. And this can be proved. They were also used in the funeral celebrations, as they were revealing the social status of the deceased. This is quite an important aspect which maybe has been overlooked. And the reason of the ingress of the Turkish rugs in the churches, it's still a matter of debate. And of course, it's such a complex phenomenon which can have several explanations. One of the theories points to the fact that during the Reformation, most frescoes, or many frescoes, have been cancelled or whitewashed, as the people followed the 10 commandments earnestly. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, you shall not bow down to them or serve them. Just as an image, here is a fresco. Of course, it is a Catholic fresco. It is a fresco from a Catholic church before 1500, which survived in the church of Mölnkrav. It is a charming place between Sigishwara and Mediash. And we have something very clear. We have the inscriptions. These inscriptions are quite unique for Transylvania, and a few survived in Hungary. And what we can see is that carpets were donated to adorn the church, because the Ottoman rugs reflecting the Sunni Islam, bearing floral or geometric motifs, but never animals or human beings, became a decent decoration for the Protestant churches. And this is exactly what it is written on a fragment of a prayer rug found in the Church of Sibiu. Just to show you, to go a little deeper and to have an idea of the complexity of information, we have the earliest dated carpet, inscribed carpet in Transylvania, which is a bird carpet, which bears the inscription Testamentum Laurentius Bolkes. This means that the carpet was in the property of Laurentius Bolkes and could have been 10 or 20 years earlier, older. This correlates with two very interesting information. For instance, in 1621, János Rimai, Hungarian, the envoy of the Prince Gabriel Bethlen, of the Prince of Transylvania, listed the carpets which he purchased in Constantinople. And among them, he mentioned a bird carpet. Of course, we can never, or very, very rarely, understand from historical records how was the carpet. Therefore, the inscriptions are so important, because we see exactly how the carpet was. This information also correlates with the Ottoman price registers of 1640, published by Kutugoglu and Halil Inalcik, which refer to white ground rugs with raven or leopard motifs produced in Salendi, a village near Uşak. This is a very, very rare case where we can identify clearly a type of carpet from the historical records, including the Ottoman records. And here is another inscription on a Transylvanian, on a double-niche Transylvanian rug found in this secluded place, the church from Bust, which is a very, very small fraction today. And it says, the carpet was donated at the expenses of Martinus Wagnerus in 1675. This carpet is extremely important in order to date a whole group of carpets which are similar or have similar border, for instance. And I will end this short excursus on inscribed rugs with a beautiful rug from Sebeş, a magnificent church. You see the choir, where there are on display these rugs, and usually a rug like this without having an inscription would easily be dated early or first half 18th century because the border is later and so on. But the inscription clarifies the date 1698, which means it has been woven at least 5-10 years before. And here a very rare photo which shows how the rugs were placed in the church, in this case on the pews. And you see, we will often see in the rugs in Transylvania this kind of wear which is due on this fact. So all this unfortunately was not very clear, was not published, and a lot of theories were circulating when I started this adventure. I could really write a book about the false theories, which in certain cases are absolutely hilarious. I must say that the first reason for I started this adventure was to prove the Anatolian provenience of this rug. I could not believe that in important books signed by major scholars like Charles Grant Ellis, Holbein, Lotto, or Transylvanian rugs were assigned, attributed to Wallachia, to Transylvania, or European Turkey. I think in Transylvania, even the stones know that these carpets come from the Turks. No need to discuss anymore. This theory is absolutely buried, and I'm very glad that in one of the last books which has been published recently, this topic has been absolutely clarified. I know many of you visited Transylvania, but let me show you some images which are difficult to find. This is, for instance, St. Margaret Church in Mediaș, where there are about 40 Anatolian rugs. It is a very important church because this one was never affected by catastrophic fires, and for this reason, a number of 16th century examples survived here in situ, like for instance this Holbein rug, which is among the most beautiful ones in the world. This is the choir of St. Margaret Church, which May H. Beatty called the best place on earth to study white ground rugs. And a smaller parish from Bogesdorf, where one of the best Lotto rugs survived in Transylvania. And we recently found, thanks to Mr. Drotloff from Mediaș, an inventory of 1857 mentioning 21 rugs on the men's benches. 2 were ganz neu, while the other were from old times. I know you all want to reach Brasov and the Black Church, which of course it's an absolutely must-see and must-visit place for rug lovers. The name is due to the big fire which affected the church in 1689. And still today, this is the greatest collection of Transylvanian rugs on the earth, in the world. I skipped an image which is very nice, of course. I had the pleasure to visit since 2004, 2002, every year Transylvania, with a lot of people. Over 250 people came on the tours. For instance, this is a moment from the visit with the Textile Museum, led by Alberto Borolevi, while this is a photo after the organ concert of 2005 with the carpet collector. It is a very special moment for me. And this is one of the last tours, the second Halley tour to Transylvania in 2007. As you see, we were a very nice group, and I'm happy to say that after these tours, we had 100% survivors. So you see, you really should consider visiting Transylvania. I understand that there are so many countries and very exotic, or going to Tibet or to Kashgar or to Iran or to Turkey. It's very, very stimulating, but at least once, I think every carpet enthusiast should visit Transylvania. And now let us go quickly through the Transylvanian group, which is one of the major groups of 17th century prayer rugs. Fundamentally, they are all prayer rugs. I pointed something which is very important, the direction of weaving, and it is consistently upside down for all directional rugs. After a lot of work, I was able to solve, let's say, to organize this big puzzle now, and make a full classification of the main groups and subgroups, which is very important when you deal with such a large amount of carpets. So we have the single niche, we have the double niche, we have the plain niche, and we have the column rugs. Of course, everyone has subgroups and different variants, which will be discussed in my next publication. It is the best research group of 17th century Anatolian rugs by far. I will always remember, when I see this image, the exhibition of 2007 mounted at the Sakib Sabanci Museum and curated by Nazano Chair and by Michael Francis. This was really a wonderful exhibition, not just rugs hanging on the wall, but a cultural project, a story which was absolutely beautiful. It was other times. Now, let us see a few facts. I know the nurse people are very fond of Turkmen rugs and Central Asian, but you see, sometimes we are so close in design, and this is not really casual. There are common roots which we must consider, and it is really fascinating to trace the iconography of the prayer rug in Persian and Timurid miniatures. For instance, this is the earliest representation of a carpet. You see the prophet kneeled on this prayer rug. We are sure it is a prayer rug. It bears the name of Allah. And this is the earliest image we have about a prayer rug, early 14th century. The same shape, this image was already crystallized in early 15th century and before, as you see here. And it is interesting how consistent this shape remained through the century. And it is, I think, important to bear in mind this thing. I take the occasion to recall John Thompson, who left us about 1 year ago, and he provided this image, which is quite rare because now probably the walls have been restored and there is no more this decoration. This is what I was told. So, continuing to trace the motive of the Mirabin prayer rugs, of course, we must mention this superb Mirab from Yeşil Turbe, which is an absolutely fabulous achievement done by the masters of Tabriz. And notice how close it is to some of the Ottoman court prayer rugs, which were the forerunners for the Transylvanians. There are so many things which we can discuss. And again, this is only a very, very brief and superficial discussion, keeping in mind that I have very few time to explain everything. Every slide, in fact, is probably enough for making a small webinar or lecture. Now we are to the plain niche Transylvanians, which again derive directly from the Ottoman court prayer rugs. I chose 3 different types. I choose the one with arabesque spandrels. I choose a beautiful one with flowering stems and with a red niche. And not incidentally, this one is one of the most beautiful rugs which Davide Halevim brought to the market. And again, I also want to recall him. He was a great passionate for Transylvanian rugs. And here we have a very, very rare prayer rug or niche rug or Transylvanian plain niche rug, whatever you want to call it. And probably somebody will ask me, how many of these, how many of these? More or less, we have in 270 examples, we have about the same percentage of red and yellow, and only a few blue. Probably it was a color which was difficult to control. What is absolutely surprising, but has of course an explanation, is that there is no one green. And I think this has a clear explanation. So here I brought some information which I found during my research, which I think it's worth sharing. First, in Louise Mackey, Symbol of Power, a wonderful book which I'm sure you all have. It is mentioned that the green identify the Muslims who have made the Hajj or the pilgrimage to Mecca. In another book by Suraya Faruqi, I learned that in the mid-17th century, this is exactly the time of the Transylvanians, there were fully fledged guidebooks that told pious Jews planning to visit Jerusalem to avoid carrying green textiles, as they could be a source of trouble. So what I think is that green was reserved for the sultans. For instance, this is one of the court prayer rugs. This is integrated by me according to the existing original fragments. And probably this is related to the fact that Ottoman rulers claimed caliphal authority since the conquest and the unification of Muslim lands under Selim I between 1516 and 17. It's an hypothesis just to give an answer. Something which is very important is that we clarify the origin. Very often this type of prayer rugs were attributed to Melas. This is absolutely not grounded, and it's enough to see the direction of wave and some technical feature and understand that these are 2 different types of rugs which were made in areas which had different weaving traditions. So we absolutely agree with Batari or Beata Slota who were the adepts of goddess origin. Good. One of the most fascinating group is the single niche prayer rug. This is a wonderful example from Doha, a wonderful museum, which I absolutely suggest to everybody to visit. And of course, this comes from Transylvania. It was formerly in the Schmutzer collection. And something which is interesting, and we brought enough evidence, it's the fact that the prayer rugs, the single niche rugs, have deep roots in the Ottoman art. And at the same time, they are the forerunners of the double niche format. And the edict sent to Kütahya in 1610 under the rule of Sultan Ahmed I is somehow the birth certificate of the double niche format. This edict prohibited to the weaver to make rugs with mirab, script, and Kaaba and sell them to the non-Muslims. And in fact, what they did was to add a second niche and continue the production. However, in many cases, the directional feature is very clear. And interestingly, they are always, I mean, in every case they are directional, they are always woven upside down. So here are just two examples very quickly of directional double niche rugs. We see, for instance, this wonderful rug from the Louvre, where the weaver placed a flame on the top lamp. Please call them lamp. It's not a vase. It is a mosque lamp, and maybe it's better to call it with her name. And also she added additional hooks on the top niche, similarly to this earlier example. And in all cases, we see the rising, the ascending palmette, which points up as it should be. Something which I will only briefly mention is the difference between first period double niche rugs and ushak, small ushak medallion. Everything is different: minor border, main border, spandrels, field organization, field motifs, and even the lamps, these amulets, are completely different. In my opinion, it is wrong to assign to ushak at least the first period rugs. It is something which has no ground, and again the direction of wave is different. Now, as something which a new feature, a new thing, I will discuss a little more in detail this group, which is absolutely elegant and fascinating, the Transylvanian rugs with large floral medallion. And not incidentally, they had the honor of being on the cover of two of the carpet magazine, the leading carpet magazine, Halley, long ago in 1888, and Carpet Collector more recently. Again, these are extremely interesting examples, and we can see how organized is the design. Of course, the weaver, it's controlled by this design, which she weaves from memory. But, and this relates to a talk which I heard recently, the talk delivered by Shiv Sikri for the Haji Baba. We can see some intentional asymmetries, imperfections. I call them asymmetries in this case. We see, for instance, the colors, top, bottom, or right, left, are different, or even the motifs. We see, for instance, this motif, which I number 2, is different from this number for this motif, which is equivalent. It is very long, and my topic is so broad, so I will not be able to enter. I will only point also in this rug, which at the first glance looks perfectly symmetrical. We see that deliberately, that intentionally, the weaver added some asymmetrical motifs. The medallion can be traced very easily. A medallion inscribing a smaller lobe medallion can be traced in the Safavid silk rugs, can be traced in Persian miniature, maybe also in Timurid ones and Timurid carpets. So you see how we can trace to earlier periods this format. In the Ottoman art, we can mention the 4 or 5 court prayer rugs showing this ogival medallion. Let me only mention that here it is very interesting how the cusp of the arc finishes with a gap. This is something which I covered in the lecture for the Textile Museum, which is available online. The same pattern is found in bookbinding, and look at this decoration, small decoration on the arches, which will be found also in Transylvanian rugs. We can trace it in painting. You see, we have an important painting of Jacob von Turenvliet. There are 2 paintings featuring this carpet, which is very, very similar to a carpet in the Black Church. So we have quite a precise dating information. And here are 3 examples from the mid-16th century, mid-17th century, from the Skokosters castle in Sweden, which could be one of the 12 Turkish Deccan Turkish table covers which were mentioned in the inventory of Count Gustav. Then we have an example from the Weidenbach church in Transylvania. It is an inscribed example, and most probably, according to the border pattern and other features, it is from about 1670. And finally, another example which formerly belonged to Emil Schmutzler and was sold by the church of Slimnik to the Saxon collector. You can see it behind me. Something which puzzled me was this plant, this flower. I thought it's a lilium, but somebody who is very wise told me, no, Ottomans did not like lilium. So I tried to search other plants, other flowers, because the same motif it's found in later rugs. It's incredible how the everlasting floral medallion can be found in later Dasgiri, and maybe you noticed on the background of Julia's and Jane's setting a Dasgiri, which is not casual. So where does this come from? I was really puzzled, and literature was not really of great help, because there is no Ottoman court prayer rug showing this element, which is so well integrated into the design. So in literature, there is something which is called umbrella-like leaves, and indeed we find them in the Mamluk carpets, and I'm so grateful to people like Anna Beslan who share information with independent scholars who have really who need museum class photographs and information. But indeed, it was not this one, because there were several things which did not match. For instance, this serrated look. Then occasionally, almost occasionally, I found this unique rug, which is now in the Turkve Islam collection, but formerly comes from the shrine of Alaeddin Kekubain in Konya, and it is clear it's this one. This is something quite interesting. It is a leaf which belongs to a famous rugged leaf pattern. I say famous because it goes back in time, and it was adopted in this Transylvanians. It was integrated in the medallion, but it was also used without being so well integrated in other Transylvanians. So here are two other examples. And again, I always show them with the same direction, with the rising palmette going up. And you can see how this motif is present together with another motif, which is this curl, which derives from the same pattern. So now things make sense, and this helps, for instance, to explain some other unique rugs, which are still which are also from the Turkve Islam collection, and are just an example of the fabulous number of different patterns which were produced in Anatolia before and after 15th century. So in this case, this motif, which comes from a well-known border, a well-known motif used in the borders, it is the rugged palmette border. You see, the rugged palmette border, which at a certain point was split into different parts. One part became this curled leaf, another part became the whole umbrella. Sometimes we find them together, And I'm glad to say that this fragment survived in a Transylvanian church, while another part of the same rug survives in the Bruschettini collection. So you see how everything is related. But I'm sure that now you have a question. And you rightly ask me, but what are these forms? Are these yellow arabesques confronting creatures, or are they complex leaf forms? If anybody has an idea, please write me an email, share with me your opinion. I'm always happy to answer. Now I will move to the next topic. So in the very last minutes of my talk, I will move to a project which is one of the most demanding projects going on in regarding Transylvanian rugs. I talk about the Bistrica collection, which since the Second World War has been taken by the parishioners and brought to Germany or to Austria. And since 1952, the 52 rugs are stored in the Germanisches Nationalmuseum in Nuremberg. This is an exceptionally interesting collection, which has never been published completely. Only Schmutzler published 8 rugs, and I published a few more based on black and white photography in my first volume. The number of outstanding rugs is really impressive, and we started a project aiming to produce high quality replica for the church, because the decision of all the factors is not to return the rugs in the church, but to keep them in the museum or in a museum storage. And I must say that I absolutely agree with the fact that 17th century rugs cannot stay in an uncontrolled media. So we started to make copies after the original rugs based on high quality photos. From the photos we make knot by knot drawings, and then we try to produce rugs using using let's say Anatolian traditional weaving technology. So we have the wool, which is hand carded and hand spun. We have natural dyes. We have good traditional weaving. I was absolutely impressed to see the weavers at work, which are perfectly able to reproduce drawings using lazy line technique. By the way, you can see now how she's finishing a line of knots. Okay, she's cutting the extra wool. And shortly you will see how she's putting the knots, and you will see what a ability she has. A weaver can put about 4,000 knots per day in 8-hour shift, let's say, and it is amazing the way how they are placing the knots on the warps without counting. They have a mathematical model of all the grid, and it's really fascinating to look. I am very, very grateful to the people who helped me in this project. All the carpets are donated by donors. Okay, here is another example which we just finished. Here is the original. Keep in mind that the carpets are not washed, so we see them with the colors which are as they are. We made the best possible drawing where we match perfectly even the brush. We developed a special technique which is very time consuming, but we are able to put also the brush on the drawing. And then we have the weaving. The drawing takes about 2 months, the weaving about 3 months. This is just it's insanely difficult to make a beautiful rug. And here is the rug after now finished. I received from Sultanani this photo last week. It is under professional finishing with yes, of course, this is a mobile phone photo. It's not a professional photo, so don't take the nuances as original. So it's a very, very challenging project, and I'm of course grateful to the people from the museum, to the people from the parish. They are giving me this opportunity, which helps me to learn a lot, because making knot by knot drawings oblige you to discover so many small details which otherwise are not known. All this is part of my publications, and I'm happy to share with you information let me tell you that many of my publications are available now as ebooks. The first one, of course, it's exhausted, and I'm extremely grateful for those who send me photographs, ideas, questions, or anything which helps to progress. So I will finish this presentation with something which was not planned. On the background of my room, you see a watercolor, and this watercolor is done by a Romanian Orientalist. He is absolutely not known to the large public, Nicholas Grant. His father, Effingham Grant, was the British consul in Romania, and he married a Romanian woman. And his son, Nicholas, studied in 1885 with Jean-Jérôme Léon in Paris. Then he returned home, and in Romania, there were such an amazing number of carpets that he often reproduced them in this kind of volcanic setting, you see, which is characterized by things which may be Italian, Turkish. Of course, the carpets are Oriental, they may be Caucasian, and you see the kilims and the windows as in old times. So I finished slightly before because I want to have the pleasure of answering some questions, and I'm happy to answer or share some other images from my database. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefano, on behalf of the New England Rug Society, but also on behalf of everyone in our audience today. We're so delighted to have had this chance to listen to you. We have people from all over the world, but I want to extend a particularly warm welcome, what we call in America, a shout out to our guests today from Turkey, many of them, of course, and from your homeland in Romania. So
good. This is
welcome to everybody. We have plenty of questions. So first question, please, Stefano. As far as the questioner knows, there were many Jews who were forced to convert, and they chose Protestantism in order to keep their tradition in some kind of a new way. Do you have any thoughts about the converted Jews and their tradition of collecting rugs and hanging them on the wall, trade with the Ottomans, related to the Transylvanian rugs history, please?
We have some evidence in the trade, and this, of course, can be found in the documents. And if you recall one of the images with the trade, you clearly can see that there are Turkish and probably Jewish merchants. I don't know, but I must tell you, I have absolutely no evidence of carpets in Jewish homes. I mean, I deal with an epoch when such kind of records, I mean, 17th century, early 18th century, are very, very, very rare. This phenomenon can be found mostly in the Saxon parishes and in the Hungarian ones. I know very little, and this is something which I will try to investigate, about Jews converted to the Reformed Church, also because there was a sort of tolerance. I'm sorry, I cannot answer this question.
Thank you, Stefano. how about the spotted carpets you mentioned? Might those be Chintamani motifs?
Absolutely and definitely yes. Those were Chintamani carpets. And we have consistently the same term used in Transylvania, which is very descriptive. And again, this is one of the very rare cases, where we can identify a carpet with the description, the very brief description in Ottoman or Transylvanian documents. In Transylvania, they were often called Kugel, Teppich, or they were called cat prints. Okay, so it is, but usually they used to say a yellow carpet or a carpet with a rose. It's very difficult. Very often in the documents we find mentioned Persian rugs, but here it's a little broader. By Persian, they probably meant Oriental. On the other hand, at that time, Turkish rugs were surely more available and surely costed less than the Persian rugs. And despite the fact that the documents mention very often Persian rugs, there is no Persian rug which survived in Transylvania today, or which can be traced, to Transylvania. There are Caucasian rugs, but not Persian rugs.
Thank you very much. Moving on, a very quick answer, if you would please, as to how to understand the difference between a single niche and a double niche rug.
Oh, yes. Look, I'm very sorry because we had to go so quickly through all these topics. But on my website, there is a very clear and an expanded presentation drawn from an article which I published years ago about single niche, double niche, and how all this should be together. If we look at this carpet, it's very clear it has a single niche. But of course, also this one is a single niche, but it's a matter of terminology. In order to give a name, we can call the carpets Lotto, we can call it Holbein. It's important to understand what we mean. I will not discuss now if this term is or is not appropriate. It is just something which helps us to understand each other. And single niche and double niche is something which is so easy to link together because they are linked together. The double niche derives from the single niche. But if somebody
I'm going to ask you to be more brief because we have a number of questions.
Good. I'm delighted.
Duty bound to let people ask their questions.
Yes.
So the next question is, were there any Armenian weavers involved with these rugs?
There is a town in Transylvania called Armenopolis, which was founded by Armenians. Okay, Armenians arrived in different waves in Transylvania because of the history of the Armenians, which is very complex, and of course I have no time to discuss it. But in 1720, the Armenians were in a place called Armenopolis or Gerla, where a census of the imperial Austrian administration has been made. And in the census, we have the number of families who were dealing with every sort of activity. So there are people who were dealing with the wool or with meat or let's say all the professions. There is absolutely no carpet weaving. There is only textiles for home weaving. Carpet weaving has been brought in Romania after 1915, when Armenians arrived from Turkey. Many of them were from Kayseri, where it was a very strong weaving tradition, and they established weaving in Romania. Before
Thank
this,
you.
there is absolutely
Let
no.
us try to get to more questions, and people can follow up in more detail with you later, Stefano. You're such a fountain of knowledge. Were the inscriptions on these rugs woven at the same time as the rugs, or might they have been added later, please?
So first of all, the inscriptions are not woven. They are just written on the rugs, okay? And they are written in the moment when the rug was donated. This is something which is very, very important. And because we don't know if the rug was absolutely new or in good condition or so on. So this is why it is so important to interpret and to have an idea of the position of the rug in the development of the pattern. So this inscription was written on the kilim when the carpet was donated to the church. But this happened also, carpets were donated also much later, but in this case the inscription, okay, it's not so interesting because cannot be related to the age of the carpet.
Thank you for explaining that. So next question refers to the presence of lazy lines on these small format rugs, which suggests they were woven by more than one weaver. Why would there be more than one weaver on such small rugs?
This is again something which I learned that it's not true. And believe me that making replica, so trying to understand how they were made and making them the same way, it's such a difficult, but also it helps to understand many things. This is absolutely not true. My rugs, I mean, my replicas are woven by one woman. It occasionally there might have been two or only one. Something which I try to trace is if one woman stays to the left, another to the right, are there differences in the patterns to the right and to the left? It's not something I could trace clearly. So I would not make a very strong statement. Sometime one, sometime two. Technically, you don't need two women to weave this carpet.
And do you think there were ever prayer rugs used for prayer in the churches?
No. This is a very good point. And you see, we can imagine that these prayer rugs were fitting the churches because of the directional, no? It was easy to, while the double niche was very easy to be placed on a table. And in fact, there are about 60 to 80 depictions of double niche rugs of the 17th century. And in most cases, they are on the table. I'm very happy because like this, you know, they survive better, you know. I like when you put the rug on the wall as you did and not on the floor. But putting a prayer rug is, of course, somehow which was pleasing, but we must absolutely not consider that they had any role, any religious role. And the word prayer rug is not mentioned, or at least I never found it in the archives, in the documents, in the church records. Okay, while the term dupla, which they use, for instance, for double niche, it's used. I didn't find. So this was probably known, but it was not perceived.
Thank you. And very briefly, we are running out of time, but we have a question about the rugs being woven upside down, please.
Can you tell me the question?
Yes, the question
the
was,
reason.
Could you explain, please, the direction?
Yes, absolutely.
The upside down direction.
And again, I'm so sorry, I could not go into details. Now, when you look at how complex, this is one of the best single niche in the world, it's from Sibiu, and it's absolutely magnificent. It is probably one of the earliest, 1600 or so. Now, the reason why it is like this is because it has a complex design which accompanies, you see, the drawing. You see, the profile of the niche is accompanied by a design. It's not just something placed there and that's all. So in order to accomplish the drawing, the weavers who were not weaving after a full cartoon were starting from the top so they could develop this drawing properly and the patterns, and they were not taking the risk of getting short of warp. Here, when they had to cut the drawing, it was not a problem. They could cut easily wherever they liked. And eventually the border, this is typical for Turkish rugs, were truncated without border solution. You see, here there is no border solution. Here the border, you see also here, this is a more rustic, of course, example, but it has great power, I think. They truncated. This is typically Turkish, and this is because they were not weaving after a full cartoon.
Thank you. So we're running out of time. 2 more questions, and I'm not going to get to all of the questions. I'm going to combine a couple of them now, which is, are these rugs still in the churches? And in the case of some rugs not in the churches, for instance, those in Nuremberg, might they come back to the churches? And are the rugs in the churches rotated to protect them from light? If they're still there, please.
Okay, now we're entering something which will need another webinar, and I am also happy to do it for you if you want.
You will set up for the future with a quick answer and leave people hungry for more.
Yes, I was the first one to fight for having more carpets in the churches now, but I must say that my opinion changed after 20 years when I saw, now imagine that when I made this project, I washed about 200 rugs professionally with museum team. And I saw the beauty. You cannot make a good photo out of a dirty rug. I think this is obvious. Now, after many years, I can see the difference. I can see the difference between the carpets in the Brukenthal Museum, where they are preserved in museum condition and they are rotated. I can see the carpets in the parishes where they are exposed, because you have light, you have dust, you have several things. I must say that there is a great concern in Brasov by the Black Church. There is a team headed by Agnes Ziegler who controls the conditions in every church where carpet are exhibited. At the same time, the number of rugs exhibited in the Black Church shrunk dramatically from 110 in the photos I showed you. Now there are about 60. So, and I must say that I absolutely agree with this trend. But every parish is independent. They decide about their rugs. This is why the project Bistrica is so important. It may be a first example of bringing a model of how to put replica, which is accepted everywhere in the churches, and eventually have museum condition for rugs. Also, in many cases, the churches have windows with UV filters.
Thank you. We have a number of questioners making various versions of this comment, which is, thank you for the fabulous lecture. I think we all share that sentiment. Certainly we here at the New England Rug Society, on behalf of Julia Bailey, myself, and our members, we thank you. And I will end with a very important question, which is, will there be more tours to see Transylvanian rugs in 2022 if conditions permit and it is safe?
As soon as is possible, I will go to Anatolia. And next year to Transylvania. This is sure, this will be done. And let's hope we will not experience another year like the past one. Transylvania, it's absolutely a must-see for all the carpet enthusiasts. And as I said before, I was always amazed by the fact that people traveled 20 times to exotic places very far and never to Transylvania. So this will be done, and it will be my pleasure to take you there. And maybe when the church in Bistrica will open, and we will have, our target is to have about 20 replica on display, then we will see how they look in the church.
We all wish for that opportunity and wish you well with this important project. Stefano, in Rome, certainly one of the greatest and most wonderful cities in the world. I, for one, hope to visit Rome in the next year or two, and sometime to Transylvania. Again, on behalf of the New England Rug Society and our audience from all over the world, our deep thanks. You say that this is a must place to visit, and your lecture is a must to hear for scholars, lovers of rugs, and people being introduced to this beauty. So again, thank you to our audience, and thank you, Stefano. Goodbye, everyone.
Let me only greet individually every one of you. And my idea is, when all this situation with coronavirus will end up and will return to normal life, I suggest to have one sabbatical year of traveling. Let us hope it will be possible.
Thank you.
Good.
Goodbye to everyone.